Hey everyone, welcome to Live with Cami. If you're listening to this on our podcast, it's Homeschool Success with Cami Wanis. I am super excited today because we have been talking a lot lately about future success and setting your kids up for their future. And one of those things, remember we talked about the 4C skills for the future with Julia Picharitza? Well, we are talking about creativity today, and that was one of those skills. So really creativity is so essential and so important, and I love all the time we have parents and people and even myself that I say I'm not artsy or whatever, I'm not creative, but guess what, I super am in a lot of different areas. You just don't even realize it. I noticed that when my son was born and I stopped teaching, I didn't have a creative outlet anymore because my creativity was in all my lesson planning and all the just moving things around and adapting and changing. And oh, what if we did this and what if we did that? I didn't have that anymore, so I found it actually again when I started his first birthday. Made him some cakes, and I made one huge it was Elmo. That's what it was. It was Elmo. And then I made a cookie monster with the same pan. And it was the Elmo pan that I made a cookie monster with. And it was super cute. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I actually really like baking and like making cakes, because then I realized it was my creative outlet. Anyways, there's lots of ways that we can do creativity, and we have Virginia Naegeli with us today, and I am super 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 excited because you guys, I know her super well. She is amazing. She's fabulous. She has taught art before with kids in school. She teaches adults, and we're talking about all kinds of art. We're not talking about just like painting or drawing. We're talking about all kinds of things. So, and I know we've talked before about art with Jackie Partridge. So make sure you go back and watch or listen to that podcast episode, because that's really, really fabulous. But today we're going to be talking about generally developing creativity with more than just just the creative mind, and why that's important, because we haven't really touched on that a lot. So Ginny, she likes to go by Ginny, so I call her Ginny because that's the way I know her. So Ginny, can you tell us a little bit about why, or just how you got started, and like why you think creativity is so important?
Well, okay, thank you. You're pulling me back to way back when, and thank you for having me here. You are a shining star, and I really am impressed with your program and what you're doing. And there's a huge homeschooling community here in Ann Arbor that I'd love to connect you to. Okay, how I got started was honestly, as a child, I flunked kindergarten. Can you imagine? I mean, I felt like I was the dummy of the world. Like everybody said, "Oh, you're a flunky." They teased me, blah blah blah. So I never had self confidence. And then in 8th grade, I had an art teacher who said, "Hey, try this." And so she gave me a different mode of learning that I was able to apply in my regular studies, and I just became, I've got my master's in special education and teaching because of her. I knew I was not a dummy. And I think the art is just a nice way to try a different modality. And I know that you were talking about baking a cake, and then you were decorating the cake. And I was thinking when I was doing a little bit of homework about what we were going to talk about today, I mean, I could go in about the mental health benefits. I wrote down 4 mental health benefits, the creative enhancement, and then emotional expression and personal growth. Those are the areas that we'll really tap into. But I got to thinking about your audience and these uh, homeschool parents who are trying to do something with their kids. And I just remember there was a time when my children were little, and I remember sitting outside the church. There was a guest speaker that came, and I remember sitting outside the church, and I really wanted to listen to that speaker. I felt like I really needed it, but I had my children, and I couldn't go in because I didn't have a babysitter. And so that led me to saying, well, wait, if we had programs more like yours, Cami, where I could be at home and I could be learning how to teach my kids what they need to know, how to put a curriculum together, that would just be amazing. And so then that made me want to talk to you more about, as a family, how you could put art into your lesson plans, how you can put art into your creative cooking, just involving the kids and the measurements. And sometimes the kids, we learn well with measuring because we have the physical spoon in our hand. So we hear and we see 2 tablespoons, and in school you're learning math, 2 tablespoons, half a tablespoon. But because you're at home, you've got the tablespoons, you have the physical size measurements, so kids can really, what do I want to say, parallel to what that actually is. So it's a great opportunity for your kids to learn exactly the physical along with the mental, along with writing it down on paper. Where I was going to go with this was the family and how you all could do it. Like everybody could be painting. I teach creativity through watercolor. My course is just the foundations because I make it fun and we break it down. And I just picture a family sitting together at the table doing each lesson painting, just learning the painting. And so I like to teach the rules like we do at school, like a school teacher, or like you as a mom or dad at home teaching. You're going to teach the rules, but then you learn to break them. You just break them. You know what these certain terminalities are, but you then just break them and be creative. That was kind of a main thing. I thought it's definitely mental health. We could go into so many angles. I just really wanted to see how I wanted to inspire you parents who are home with your kids to give it a try. Don't be afraid because maybe you don't. What I hear a lot is I don't have a creative bone in my body. So please don't let that stop you. Number one, you probably do. You just didn't have some tools to help you get successful. And how are you going to learn if you don't play? Just put it on paper. I would recommend, I wrote down a little things I'd like. I just would recommend getting a mixed media book for you and getting a mixed media book for your child and a set of paints that you both can use. I would do watercolor because it's a pick me up, set it away, pull it back out, easy to do. And start exploring with the colors, play with the colors on the paper, see what they do. And I would have you do it side by side, but kind of that parallel painting where they're doing what they're doing and you're doing what you're doing. And you like each other's work, but we want to keep them, you and I briefly talked about this the other day, we want to keep them in that mode of this is what I'm doing and how I'm creating. And I'm not sure how to say it, but I don't want you to approve of it, because if you approve of it, then I change why I'm creating. If you just ask me questions like, ask me why I did what I did, or what colors I used, and why when I used red, or what's my favorite color. Like ask your child questions about their drawings. They will feel validated. They don't need to hear that you say it's beautiful, because in their minds, they might not think it's not. A lot of people, when you're drawing, you think it should look a certain way. In their minds, it might not look that way. And if you tell them that, then they're going to say, oh, they're just, my parents are just trying to be nice. But if you have them validate to you, ask them probing questions about why they're doing what they did, what colors they chose. And the same with you. When he looks at your painting, when your children, he or she look at your painting, same thing. Like just tell them why you did what you did. And together, you're just going to see the world differently. That's where the art comes in. And that's where my passion comes in. I want you to look at a tree, and I don't want you to just see a green tree. I want you to see the 5 colors that are greens in that tree. And that's what makes it, the values make it depth and make it dimensional. Yeah, that's basically it. And if you have a littly and they're, 5 or under, maybe even a 2-year-old, that's when I started with my kids. I just gave them the little set and let them just, like my daughter, I have a picture of her with paint all over her face. I knew that was paint time, and I was cooking and she was in the high chair. She just had it all over, and it was just fun. And that was okay because you just clean it up. It's not a big mess. But what I was going to say is get construction paper, any color, and then take a brush and water, and then let them just get the construction paper wet. This was a trick I did with my students for spelling as well. They would spell the word in that construction paper, or a rice tray is really good if you can just draw that. It's still creative, but you're teaching spelling, but then the construction paper dries up. So there's no red mark saying it's wrong. It's just an opportunity to try again, and the paper dries. It's a great one to do at a restaurant too, if you want to go out and instead of bringing out the iPad. Oh, it's so frustrating. There's so much more you can do with these kids than just let them sit in front of a screen. And even ourselves as adults, as parents, if they see us on the screen, looking at our screens. That's what they're going to do. And this is my main question. I think you're going to love it. Let me just say it right. What does our world look like without creativity? We're all at our screen. You go to the health club, you're on your screen. You're walking down the street, you're on your screen. I see people walking their dogs or looking at their screen. Where's the creativity there? Why are we constantly needing to be entertained?
I love that you said that, and you said so many things, and I absolutely love it. It's super great, and so no, it's totally great. I love it. And so one of the first things that you talked about, I loved it, was breaking the rules and with cooking and things like that. I think that's a really great way to just emphasize the breaking of the rules. I don't cook with measurements. I don't even a lot of times I don't even bake with measurements. Sometimes I do, but it's really just an exercise in experiment, and it's science, but it's also art. You're being creative. What happens if I put a little more of this and a little more of that, a little
Yeah.
less of this, and what happens in there? And being creative is really, really important. It doesn't transfer well when your friends ask you for their recipe, but it's really great to have your kids just kind of play with that stuff. And oh my gosh, I'm thinking of like my son would I would have been the parents like, no paints all over the face, like
Yeah.
but I absolutely I love in the high chair, it's clean, it's like contained. I
Yep.
like that. And then it's the writing on the construction paper with the water. Genius.
Yeah.
Genius. That's my kind of art there because it gets cleaned up super easy.
Yeah. Well, how about the bathtub with shaving cream and shaving cream on the wall?
Totally. And they have those finger paints and stuff like that that you can
Yeah.
use in the bathtub and everything, which is really fun. I love that. So I know you were talking about just, the creativity and what it does for our you were talking about mental health.
Yeah.
What kinds of things do you think, if we are really, really creative and you're saying, yeah, I want you to look at a tree and see the shades of green and see the depth and the values of the different angles and things. But what I always think of too for me is if someone wasn't creative in that way, not being able to see the world for the beauty of it means that you can't really appreciate the beauty in yourself. I mean, I know that for me, I think about that a lot, because it's really important to transfer to put yourself into the world in that way. And so that gives you a foundation, especially as an adult and as a child. What do you think
Yeah.
about, what are some, ways that you think that's mentally, and just us living our, successful future, how does that help us?
Well, honestly, it's huge, especially the working business person who's all day at the office, function, function, function. Then you come home, function. There's no like space. And if you give yourself some time and space to just put color on paper, it's relaxing. It is anxiety reducing. It definitely helps your mental health. And so you're just taking a mental break right then and there. You're giving yourself a mental break, and putting those colors onto the paper is getting you in the right side of your brain. So you're connecting your brain and you're crossing back and forth, and you're getting to be a whole brain, a whole person. Now, piece I talked about judging, about, oh, that's a pretty picture. If you stay away from that, that allows you to stay in that right side of the brain and play. If
Well,
you're
that's why
worried,
they have adult coloring books, right? I mean,
yes,
for the
yes.
same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's organized for you, which is fine, but you still choose your colors, and that may be a safe place to start, which is great. But you start really tapping into that creative mode when you're maybe coloring, just transferring that image that you just did, but by itself on your paper. You're in the right brain, you're relaxing, you're out of body experience. I've talked about how you use it for mental health or for stress reduction. Like, I could look back in my life and I see like 10-year chunks when something major happened in that 10-year at that mark. And I remember thinking, well, how did I ever get through that? And then I thought, wow, look at the paintings I created during that time. That's how I did it. I jumped into the painting, whatever kind of creativity, cooking, painting, silk, oils, acrylics, anything, sand. building something in the sand. When your kids are building sandcastles, leave them alone, let them do their thing. Let them create.
Yeah, I absolutely love what you're saying because it really something I was just thinking about as I'm picturing a mom, my friend who has 4 kids, and when they were little, just like, oh my gosh, the thought of doing like an art project is so overwhelming because there's just chaos, right, happening. But I feel like if you're participating in that and you just it allows you to be and with not without kids, but it allows you to be present, right?
Yeah.
Because you're focusing on like, what am I doing right now?
Yeah. And honestly, every mess can be cleaned up. You're not using acrylic paints, you're using watercolor. They can be cleaned up. You're using water on construction paper. And if you can, like, that's how you learn when your child's digging in the mud. Like, you're going to be, you got to play in the rain. You've got to draw and make shapes. You've got to pile leaves up and make a little house. And, you've got to get into it, get the tactile experience as well as the color experience, as well as the smells. You need it all to pull it together. And I always just said, okay, this is going to be, I'm cooking dinner. She likes to paint. I'm going to let her do that. Like, and she's safe. She's right there by me painting. Why not? I know I can wipe up the tray, or I would have the table when they got older. I would be painting and they wanted to paint too. So I made sure it was stuff that it wouldn't matter. I put a big tablecloth down and just, gave it a time frame, and then said, well, we'll pick it up tomorrow and we'll come back to it, and let them just be creative. I think and that painting happens to be my avenue. Cooking would be amazing. I know that my daughter was cooking a lot at a certain age, and it tasted okay, but we were kind of like, why did the cake not rise? What happened? And what I realized is she really wasn't using the measurements, but she learned. That's how she learned. She
Yeah.
mixed a lot up, and I remember cooking something for my dad. My mom was out of town, and I was younger, and I made a what is stroganoff, like it's just hamburger meat and soup, and then you needed to use a teaspoon of salt. Well, I didn't know the difference, a teaspoon, a tablespoon. So at dinner, we could not eat it because I used a tablespoon of salt. So I learned. I knew, and my dad tried his best to eat it, but we ended up going out. And, I learned. I was like, oh, okay, hands on learning. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. And what's really funny is that for me it was always kind of an overwhelming thing, but we did build in areas, like you said, areas of like, okay, I'm gonna wrap this paper, I'm gonna wrap this whole thing in plastic, man, wrap the kid. I'm like, I
Yeah.
got this down. And it was I'm not a Play-Doh parent. Oh my gosh, I hate Play-Doh. But it's but it's a way. I was like, okay, I'm gonna be with it, I'm just gonna go with it. And it just becomes an avenue for creativity. And I know for my son, one of the things we didn't talk about before, and I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here, but I know you're solid because this is your expertise, is working with kids that are really perfectionist and very, very detail oriented, and they want things to look like they want them. My son is not very like traditionally artistic creative because he is so I want it to look this way and it's not looking like I want it to, and I don't know how to get it there, and it's frustrating, and so I'm just not going to try. So how do you get a child to like move beyond that space and to really just be okay with playing and having it not look like they want it to
Yeah.
look?
Yeah. So, okay. So my first response is teach them some tools, the basics, like let's, for watercolor, for example, what is wet on wet? What is wet on dry? What happens if I put salt in there? What happens here? Make a book of a kind of a dictionary of all these terms, get that control, teach them the control, and then let them start creating, because they have the tools in the background. They'll be able to go past that frustration because they'll have the layers that you need when you're doing a
I
painting.
love that.
And be free. Like, when we're talking, I say, it's just paper. It's just paper. Try it again, and save everything you do and go back and look at it. For your son, the older child, that he knows if it's good or not. He has his own opinions. So you don't want to say, oh, that's fantastic, because he knows it's not what he wanted. But how do you get what you want? Learn a little bit of tools, learn the layers, and then you can start getting what you want. And you can start seeing. How to see things is really big in art, for
Yeah,
him to see it.
definitely. Yeah, and I love he's like he sees it in his mind and then he's like, "Oh, I don't really know how to get there, but I love
Yeah.
the tools." I love that. That's super important. I did get him a book when he was little because he loved animals. He still loves animals, and I got him a book on how to draw animals, like children's book, on how to draw animals. It was like
Yes.
amazing because he always wanted to do like birthday cards from scratch and everything, but he wants to draw animals on them because what else does he draw? And so
That was
so
good.
he gets this book out and he likes to draw the animals. He freeforms it a lot, but it's getting to where he's okay with doing that now. But he's a lot older and it took a long time. It took a long time. But I could have definitely exemplified it a little bit better. And that's something I want to talk to you about. So how do parents, so we're not feeling that creative. I'm like, I don't have time to
Exactly.
paint. Like how do we why is our example so important and how do we get in there?
Well, that's a really good question because those are the people that I don't have a creative bone in my body. How am I going to try to teach my child? Do it together. You don't have to be the expert in art. And your art is different than somebody else's art. So there's nothing I really believe. Okay, I'm going to go back to my real story here. I believe it's just like riding a bike. When you first got on your bike, for you and as an adult, it's like this for your child. When you first got on that bike, you what did you do? You wrote it, you fell. You wrote, you fell. You tried and tried again. Then tomorrow you did it again. You tried it again and again. And then what happened? Oh, wait a minute. I made it down the driveway. And then what happened? You were like, "Oh, I like this. I'm going to go a little further." You went down the street, right? And then you're like, "This is great." And then you went all the way around the block. And then as you got older, you were able to ride your bike to your friend's house. And now you're able to go wherever you want on your bike. So you start baby steps. You start with a little few tools, do it together. You don't have to be better than them when it comes to art, and your art can be different. That's really what I love when I have a student who's learning their style. It's easy to say, "Oh, take my program and you'll learn your style." It doesn't happen that way. You just get exposed to some things and something clicks and you find out what you like. Some people like to illustrate their work. Some people like to make it sloppy and loose, and some people like it really tight, tight. And if you're a tight, tight painter, that's fine too. I do think the key for all of us is we see a tree and we want to paint that tree. But what we need to know, some of the tools, and here's a tool for you, is just think of it in layers. Like what would be the first layer? Oh, okay. That tree has a base, it has a foundation, it has brick. Whoops. It has wood, and then from the wood, then are the leaves, and then wait, these leaves are closer to me. They're a little lighter in color. Those are further away from me, and it's just observation and being free to explore and be wrong. It's your private workbook. Nobody has to look at it. You can have a show up. In my course, I give everybody a practice book and a show off book. And I want to teach all the tools in the practice book. And that's where you practice and you make your mistakes. And then when you're ready, you put it on your show off book. And then when people say, what are you guys doing for creativity? You can show them the show up. They don't have to see your learning patterns. And you do need to learn from mistakes. That's fine. Drawing. I don't like people to see my drawing the first time I did it. No, I don't want to. But I needed that to learn the base and foundation. So for him, I would just say, just take your time, build it up. It's not just the final product.
Yeah, and something I was thinking about also was if just like writing, when I say kids hate writing or whatever, well, there's no reason why you can't do it with them. There's no reason why you can't write with them or you can't write. He writes a little bit, you write a little bit, or you write everything. He comes up with the ideas. Either way, whatever that case might be a good starting point. And then also, why can't you work on the same project together?
Yeah,
You
why not?
could. I
The
mean, why
only thing
not?
is I caution with that because you could,
Okay.
and that would be your final goal. But the only reason why I caution is because you're coming from an adult brain, and the
Right.
child will always feel like you're better than he or she is. It's only because your adult brain knows a little bit more. You've already experienced quite a few things. So that would be I would just do the parallel painting so that you don't say, well, look at mine compared to yours. That's a big turns a lot of people
Oh,
off the
yeah,
scent.
no, we don't wanna be comparing for
Right,
sure.
because they do that. They naturally, even if you didn't say anything, they naturally do that. And then you would just say, "Well, look, I'm working on this and you're working on that." Like, but you're learning at the same time. That parallel play is really
Yeah.
important. painting.
Definitely,
You
definitely.
said
I love
something
that.
there.
And you could do oh, go ahead.
Well, you said something, and it reminded me of oh, use drawing as well in your lesson plans as far as I don't know if you remember, but when the kids were little, they would draw a picture and then they would write the sentence about what's happening in the picture.
Yeah.
So it's an excellent writing prompt, but it helps them get outside of their logical brain, get in the right side of the brain, do a little creative something, and then write, make it a writing activity, and then explain it. Like what is that? Tell me, write a story about what you just did or what you just made or what's
Yeah,
happening.
or the opposite is completely true as well. And so you can do the opposite when you're
Yeah.
doing like, and we do that all the time in school. That's something that we do a lot is to, okay, let's draw a picture about what we just read. And that's reading comprehension and that's a
Yep.
lot of things, but it's also using the creative side. It also shows a lot of things. One time I was teaching in a school that was it was a middle class school, but it had the real I want to say the air about it was very like,
Prestigious.
yeah, prestigious and things, and the kids had to act a certain level, of class or whatever. And it was a really crazy ambiance in that school. It was quite interesting. But I had them reading a book, Cry the Beloved Country. It's a beautiful book about South Africa. And they were reading about shanty towns, and they had like I got the idea that they had no idea what a shanty town
Yeah.
looked like. I just from our discussions, and so I was like, "Hey guys, let's just draw a shanty town. Let's draw a shanty town. Let's just see how you think it should be."
What your vision is.
And so they're drawing it, and they're drawing windows, like a house with windows and a curtains and things like that. And I'm like, y'all, y'all, think garbage, think things thrown away. That's what we're trying to think here. Like,
Yeah.
and so we had to it reveals what your visual mentality is about what you're experiencing. I love that.
Yeah, that's really clever. That was a really clever way to assess what they were learning. To
Well, and
draw
a
what
kind
you
of a
just
reality check for them too, because it was like, well, oh,
yeah.
oh, I did
Yeah.
rather than seeing a video or seeing a movie or something like that, and that works too. But
They
but
don't
but
feel it as if they like what you did was you had them get to the right side of their brain, draw what they thought, and they really felt that. And they then realized the sting of how their house looked to what it must have really been like. So you really made them feel versus seeing a movie, you're passive. You're just watching it. You're just watching the screen. You're not involved at all. And that's the whole thing about bringing creativity into your life, into your world. This passive living is just not fun. I have one
absolutely,
quick story to tell you. I don't know
yeah.
how
Go
we got
ahead.
time, but I found it. My husband found a picture in my file. My parents saved files, and so he was going through it. He found a picture, and it was a drawing that I drew when I was, I think, 6 or 7. And I have two sister. I have 4 sisters. So two of them have dark hair and they're older. And I drew a picture of them like laying on the couch reading a book. And then I have twins just above me. And I drew a picture of them like swimming in a swimming pool. And then when you turned it over, I drew a picture of a person, a little girl, sweeping, mopping, dusting, which I
Cinderella
never
syndrome.
did. My mother never made me do that. I just did when I wanted. But I was like, wow, what does this tell you? Cinderella or what?
That's so funny. Maybe you've just seen Cinderella at that point or something. Yeah.
Maybe, but it it's so funny to go back and look at stick figures, but it still got the message across. It doesn't have to be perfect, but
No.
I still got the story.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. So, Jenny, tell us, you mentioned your course several times. Tell us a little bit, is your course something I know it gives you basic tools
Yeah.
and the rules and things like that. So tell us, is this something that families could do together?
Yes. Yeah. I designed it so that the lesson, you put it up on your screen and you just watch it together, you stop it, or you can fast forward it. If you don't like, if my voice is driving you crazy, just fast forward, just press the speed at like 1.5. I mean, sometimes you do that. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, this is slow. But the whole point is it just, you're doing it together. You're going to have your own little workshop book. They're going to have their own little workshop book, and you never know where it's going to take you. It's your own journey, and it's the kids are parallel learning. They're seeing that you're learning too, and that's really exciting. And maybe yours is going to look fancy and better, whatever, but that's okay. That's you have an
Yeah, you
adult
guys
mind.
know how I feel about the lifelong learning, right? And setting the example. So that's super important. And Ginny is a master at really giving you, walking you through step by step. I am super excited about you guys connecting with her. I have all of her information in the show notes. They're in the in YouTube comments, and then also she's going to go ahead and put them on Facebook as well in the group. So make sure that you reach out to her and just pick her brain, book a call with her, and just see like,
Yeah.
hey, what can I do? I want to get more creative with my kids, but I don't know. I hate messes, right? So
Yeah.
she's got
That's
lots of great ideas. That's me. That's me. Okay. That's what I'd be doing. So, okay, you guys, this has been super, super amazing. Thank you so much,
Thank
Jenny, for
you.
joining us today. And we will check in with you guys next week. Keep creating in lots of different ways because it really benefits your kids in who they are going into the world and how they can really develop all the rest of their skills and move with their the thing they want to do that's going to lead them into changing the world for the better, right? So that's
Yes, yes.
exciting. I love it. Thanks so much for joining us, Ginny. We'll talk to you guys again next week.
Thank you.
Bye bye.